Well, hi there. Welcome back to Return to Yehovah. I was reading in the Book of Ezekiel last night. This week's Haftorah portion is in Ezekiel chapter 44. And if you're familiar with that part of the book, the last probably 5 chapters, maybe 6, um, all describe in detail this, what I call the last days. No, that's not correct. I'm going to call the millennial kingdom's temple in Jerusalem. It's described, like I say, with all kinds of detail, and God gave this very specific set of descriptions or whatever about this, from where different buildings were and steps and walls and, not like plans to build per se, but a lot of detail. Anyhow, the point I want to make today, and I'm going to read it off my little phone here, but I'm just looking at Ezekiel 44 verses 1 through 3. Okay. Now imagine that, this guy Ezekiel, it's a vision or whatever it must be. I mean, he's shown all these different things. 5 chapters worth of detail. But in chapter 44, he says, and I believe he's being led around by an angel or a messenger from God of some way. I didn't, I don't have that right in front of me. But basically, the Lord is showing him all these different things. So he says, Ezekiel 44:1. Then he, whoever's leading him around, brought me back the way of the gate of the outward sanctuary, which looks towards the east, and it was shut. So the gate on the east was shut. And then Yehovah said unto me, This gate shall be shut, it shall not be opened, and no man shall enter in by it, because Yehovah, the God of Israel, has entered in by it, therefore it shall be shut. The next verse says, It is for the prince. The prince, he shall sit in it, in this gate in the east, at the east, to eat bread before Yehovah. He shall enter by the way of the porch of that gate, and shall go out by the way of the same. Okay, so yeah, unfortunately I had to read that in King James, which I modified a few words just so it would be understood to our modern audience a little bit. But when I read that, I had to stop and go, wow, that's really cool. Because it tells us right there, the prince is the only one who can come and go by that eastern gate. Now, I think there's more detail given later on, or possibly even before, like that it's opened on the Sabbath and things like that, But of course, to me it's obvious that the prince is Yeshua himself. I see this as describing the temple that will stand, not the one that the Antichrist is expected to set himself up as God in. Okay, not some third temple that man is going to build or anything like that. But after Yeshua comes, defeats all his enemies, and sets up his rule in Jerusalem for the 1,000-year millennial reign, that temple will be constructed according to what Ezekiel has written. Now, if that's not what that is about, then I have no idea. Okay, but it seems to go together with so many other verses. And we know that the Messiah is going to come and rule on a literal kingdom, or on a throne, literally on earth, for 1,000 years. And during that time, Satan will have already been bound and thrown into a bottomless pit for the duration of that time. Okay, we get that detail in the book of Revelation. So anyhow, this is not meant to be a long, drawn-out thing here, but I just thought it was really cool. You read just a little passage, and it's saying no man will go or go through that gate or whatever, because well, it doesn't say the Messiah, but it says the Prince. Now, he's never called by name in this, in the book of Ezekiel, or at least in these chapters. But it is believed to clearly be referencing, just like other verses talk about David, will be, our king, or the prince at the time. Excuse me, but I don't believe that David is going to be resurrected and sit on a throne there. Could that be? Sure. It's, definitely a possibility. But we already know that Yeshua is going to come with the armies of heaven, all clothed in white, coming on the clouds at the last battle to defeat, God's enemies and all that. And he's going to rescue whoever's still alive down here. And then he is going to set up his rule. Look at the last couple chapters of Zechariah in the Tanakh, or the Old Testament, and you get more detail there. Maybe I'll do a little video about those parts. But anyhow, I just wanted to look at this. We know that, we've at least you hopefully heard that the Eastern Gate. When you think about, that gate going into the city of Jerusalem, it's literally blocked right now. I mean, it's been, covered up with stone or brick or whatever, so that, if you were to go to Israel and stand on the Mount of Olives, at least unless it's changed in the last year or two, no one goes in or out through that gate. And in fact, as you probably have heard, a lot of Muslims have deliberately put graves in the ground of the hillside outside of that gate. And the way it was explained to me years ago, their reasoning behind that is, if the Messiah of the Jews is supposed to come, through there, then we're going to make it defiled with all these graves, so there's no way he can come through. Now, the first time I heard that, I had to just laugh. I thought, well, you can try whatever you want, but just like a hot knife going through a thing of butter, you're not going to stop the Messiah when he's coming, Not dead bodies, not live bodies, not giants, for crying out loud. But anyhow, just a little snippet there. I wanted to mention that I thought that was really cool, just a little part of the passage. But God says it is specifically reserved. That's where whoever this prince is, we know Messiah, Yeshua, is called Sar Shalom, or the Prince of Peace. And that comes from Isaiah, where that's one of his names that he will have, the Prince of Peace. But anyhow, you don't have to agree with me. I'm just commenting on something that I saw that I thought was kind of interesting, and we'll just leave it for now. Maybe I'll do something another time with more details, just to kind of picture this. I know there are actually a lot of people, when I've talked about this temple described in Ezekiel, they think it's not even a real thing. They think, oh, it's too late. The Jews failed to do something that God wanted them to do, so they don't get to build that temple or whatever. And it makes no sense at all. Why is it in one of the prophets' books talking about the future? And it talks about there will be sacrifices made there, peace offerings and things like that. And it mentions the Passover being done again. That may, mess with your brain when you think that, wait, Yeshua was the final sacrifice for all, and he's our Passover. Why would we ever do more sacrifices later? Now, God knows, and we don't, I don't care who you are, we do not understand everything about God's ways or about his sacrificial system or anything. All I know is God himself sent Yeshua to die on the cross to be a once-for-all sacrifice for sin for all mankind. But he did that knowing that down the road, in the future, Messiah, Yeshua, was going to return, and he was going to literally set up a kingdom on earth. And God knew, and he showed through Ezekiel what the temple is going to look like. So we may find out when we get there someday, we may, it may be explained to us and we realize, oh, I had no idea. Maybe these offerings, like a peace offering or, the different thank offerings and things like that, my guess is there's way more about those than we understand. Okay, so don't assume you got it all figured out, because God's ways are way up here and our ways are way down here, and He's the master tactician and everything else. And I don't know, it'll make sense someday. And I'm just going by what I've read in the Word. If you don't want to believe that, or read it yourself and ask God to show you what the truth is. I don't pretend to have it all figured out. So anyhow, I just wanted to share. I thought that was very cool that only the prince gets to come and go through the eastern gate. And it's not even talking about a huge thing where he kicks down the wall and comes, marching through with his army. But it's just saying once this temple is set up, the gate is going to be shut, because it says Yehovah, the Lord God of Israel, entered through that gate. I mean, it's pretty interesting. I assume that means that the Spirit of God, the Shekinah, we've heard of the glory of the Lord, filled the tabernacle back in the time of Moses, and it came and filled the temple at the time of Solomon when he dedicated that temple. And the priests couldn't even stay in there. It was just so awesome. So I think it says that that's going to happen again, but I don't know where that is in that part of Ezekiel. Like I say, maybe I'll look that up and do another little video. But anyhow, I guess I'll just end it there for now. I just thought that was interesting, and take it or leave it. But Yehovah bless you and keep you. Shalom.